Good morning, and good morning, Senator. I know we have a lot to talk about. There has been a lot of news lately of how Americans feel of this Iran war, how it's going. It seems like the peace talks have completely fell apart. And now we're looking at either are we ramping up escalation? If, there was some even reports, I believe, by Larry Johnson that he's stating that Iran might have acquired nukes and that there is intelligence going around Marco Rubio and Trump that Iran has now acquired a nuke, and it's just this new kind of posturing and element that has entered into the scene. Now, I know we wanted to start a discussion off with a story that broke in Axios, which is about a tense phone call with Netanyahu and Trump. So I want to go ahead and pass it to you, Senator. And good morning. It's nice to see you while we talk about these top discussions.
Okay. Well, good morning, Morgan. Yeah, this is interesting. It's actually a very positive thing, I think, about Trump, because now, Trump did not want to start the war against Iran. He had pretty much dismissed the idea. And then Netanyahu, with all of the tremendous support that he has within Congress and the House and the Senate, and sort of his dominance over the U.S. government, he just launched the attack without any real agreement with the United States. He just launched it with the belief that if they did it, that Trump would have no choice but to chime in and throw the American armed forces into war on behalf of Israel. And that's exactly what happened. There was so much pressure on Trump that he had to join in with this wacky war that was doomed from the beginning. And so anyway, so he didn't like that, but anyway, they sort of papered over their differences. And then what happened is, as we grow close to the midterm elections, and as our stocks and supplies of oil are running out, there comes a point where Trump, he's a very pragmatic guy, and he just decided, okay, we got to cut this thing off, we'll cut our losses and move on. And then immediately, as soon as it was clear that the United States was becoming very serious about arriving at a peace agreement, Netanyahu ordered his forces to launch another major terror attack into Lebanon. And when that happened, he did it knowing that this would outrage everyone. It would break the peace deal. So he deliberately broke the peace deal that was very important to Trump, very critical to him. So afterwards, Axios leaked a report. I would say U.S. officials leaked the report to Axios, and it was pretty explicit. It said the U.S. officials summarized the remarks. I guess Trump was screaming at Netanyahu. He said, "You're effing crazy. You'd be in prison if it weren't for me. I'm saving your ass. Everybody hates you now. Everybody hates Israel because of this." So, Trump is voicing what's known in the White House is that the reputation of Israel as some sort of a, Western-oriented, highfalutin place, that's gone. I mean, people have looked, they say, okay, these guys, they're always talking about, Holocaust, this and that, and here they're creating their own Holocaust against their neighbors. And so then the next thing is Trump turns around, and, his problem is that, Israel, from the outset of this war, one of their major goals was to seize land that belonged to the Christians and the Shia Muslims in Lebanon. This is not a new thing. It's been going on since 1948. There have been at least 4 very major attacks by Israel against the Lebanese. And so this was just another one, and they felt like, okay, this time we can get it. This time we'll just obliterate all. We'll do what we did in Gaza. We'll Gaza a portion of Lebanon, and then we'll settle it with Jewish settlers, and we'll kill off all life forms in that part of Lebanon. So anyway, now U.S. presidents have never been allowed to communicate with Hezbollah, which Hezbollah is an element of the Lebanese government. It's the Shia element. It's not just the army. But the U.S. was pressured into declaring them to be a terrorist organization in 1997. I mean, so it's not that long that we created this myth of them being a terrorist organization. They're not. They're a self-defense organization that protects Lebanon against the frequent Israeli incursions. And so what was kind of amazing is that Trump communicated directly with Hezbollah, which was forbidden. U.S. presidents, the Zionist billionaires do not permit American presidents to communicate directly. And Trump just said, I'm doing it. He got in touch with them. They pledged that they would not attack Israel as long as Israel would not attack Beirut, the capital of Lebanon. So it's very interesting, and it just shows that this idea. We always are indoctrinated with this idea that Israel is our strongest ally. Now, when we went to war in Vietnam, we had set up the nation of Israel. I mean, it never would have happened without the U.S. Doing it for the Jewish refugees out of Europe who settled Palestine and drove all the indigenous people out in 1948. And but anyway, they've just gotten such control through combination of blackmail and bribery and so forth that they just dominate our government. And in any event, I would say, in a sense, Trump may be the first who has ever just defied them and broken some of the Zionists' red lines. There's red lines that constrain U.S. presidents. And he said, well, when he gets bad, he does get mad. So I think it's a good sign that at least we're showing just a tiny bit of independence from Israel.
Yeah. I wish that we exerted more power. I think that, we have the power to not give them weapons. I think that is probably a huge tool, because it would basically enable or make Israel unable to conduct these military actions in the first place. So I think it's kind of funny how we're giving them the weapons, and then we get upset when they use the weapons, but we can have ultimately the control to stop them from using the weapons. But what was interesting is on Wednesday, Marco Rubio was testifying in front of Congress, where he was explicitly asked if Israel has nukes. And he, I don't know if you had seen that, where he kind of, it was Joaquin Castro out of Texas. He asked him directly, we hear a lot of this existence of nuclear weapons in Israel. With your expertise, do you have any knowledge on this? And of course, in political fashion, you have Marco Rubio who says, well, the entire world thinks that they have a nuke. So maybe they have a nuke, but we don't know. But we know that with American intelligence, they have a certain, either they do or they don't. So that was very, very telling. I think that was probably one of the first times that a congressional member was able to ask that direct of a question on the fact of Israel has nukes to a State Department official. Or the head.
It shows the immense dominance that Israel has over the United States. Now, Representative Massey of Kentucky, the one who was just defeated by Israeli money, he disclosed the fact that every member of Congress, the Senate and the House, has a Jewish representative in their office, on their staff, to make sure that they don't cast a vote that goes against Israel.
Yeah, I think he referred to it as the AIPAC handler. And I think it was on Tucker Carlson. He said that there would be many times when he would ask his colleagues, like, okay, how are you going to vote on this bill? Oh, I gotta talk to the AIPAC guy to see if it's a good bill or not. And he found that to be very, very alarming. There is interesting news about, Thomas Massey. I really applaud him in his effort to not, cower and really sulk in defeat. This Monday, which is actually the anniversary of the attack on the USS Liberty, he is going to, on the House floor, honor and dedicate some time to the brave crew members who also died and were wounded. You had 34 members who died and 171 members that were wounded. And this was the largest attack on any naval vessel in the entire history of America. And very little people are even knowledgeable about what had happened that day. I think there's a senator who had done this action as well, but this will be the first time that a House representative that will put this on the floor and have these remarks in perpetuity. So I found that to be very interesting.
The attack on the USS Liberty, it's another one of these things like the nuclear weapons. The Zionist movement has such dominance over the media. It has its own rules of censorship, and you are not allowed to say that Israel deliberately attacked a U.S. warship in international waters, attacked it repeatedly, not just once. It wasn't, oh, we made a mistake. No, the American ship was flying a big American flag, and they made low altitude attacks very directly to where they could see the flag. They knew it was an American flag, and they very nearly sank the USS Liberty. They killed a lot of Americans, a lot of American sailors, and the ship made a desperate call for help for U.S. forces to fly and interdict the Israeli attackers. And it went all the way to President Lyndon Johnson, who said, no, forget it. You're not going to do that. Because he knew that if he crossed the Zionist movement, he'd be gone. He'd be assassinated. Something bad would happen very promptly.
Well, yeah, this was at the heels of the JFK assassination. And, I think that had a time where a lot of people were scared of dissenting from either, the Israeli lobby for one thing. You had, other interests that were very powerful at that same time that also were angry with the projection that JFK wanted to bring the country. You had, the assassination of MLK, RFK, although that whole period of time where it was, if you dissented and had a following that you were amassing that had some significant pull into actually changing the country, you were no friend, and you were likely to have a hit out on you. So I think that is also may have been at play as well. I know that Lyndon B. Johnson, his mother was heavily into the AIPAC lobby at the time. but it was under a different name. But he was also grew up into the indoctrination of, Israel is the greatest ally, and we need to, conduct with them in accordance to that way. So I thought that was very, very interesting. And Thomas Massie, he really appears to still be trying to push the envelope in a really good way, and staying out in the front lines until his time. He, passes the torch to Galrain in his position.
I hope he stays very accurate. Now, as you know, we had some pretty dramatic news about the in the Congress, where House of Representatives passed a war powers resolution. The Republicans have been trying to block it from getting to a vote, but the House of Representatives, with a handful of Republicans, including Massey, voted a resolution. Now, the resolution, by its terms, requires Trump to terminate military action and to remove U.S. forces from the sphere of engagement with Iran, unless Congress authorizes military force explicitly. Now, some people say, oh, this doesn't matter because it's got to go on to the Senate and they have to vote. And then even if it does, it has to go to the president and he'll veto it. Now, all of that's true. But what is not true is to say that the vote does not have any effect, because it really crystallizes the antipathy of the American people towards this war. 2/3 of the entire American population is opposed to the war. Increasing numbers of people are beginning to view Israel as a nation whose government are war criminals, creating atrocities, genocides, a Jewish Holocaust against the Arab neighbors. And so it's a declaration that's important, and that's why there was such a struggle to keep it from coming to a vote. But it adds one more element to the idea that we have got to quit this, and we got to do it as quickly as possible. Now, one of the reasons is that there was an announcement just this past week that ExxonMobil they're moving their headquarters. I think it's from New Jersey down to Texas, wherever it was. They're going to Texas, and but the critical thing is that Neil Chapman, the senior vice president of Exxon, very, very powerful, very knowledgeable guy, he said in the coming weeks, he says the United States crude inventories of oil have reached low levels that are unheard of, and that in the coming weeks, oil prices could hit $160 a barrel. And he's talking about in the near term, perhaps by the end of this month. And so it's very clear we've got to end this war. If the oil prices go to 160, it's going to cause all kinds of political unraveling in the country. And this is not some guy who throws flippant remarks here and there, but senior vice president of Exxon is knowledgeable. He's not going to say something that is way off base or political in nature. He's just saying we are coming to the end of our supply of oil.
Yeah, it almost seems like they're trying to sound the alarms in a sense, because you would speculate that certainly CEO members, they normally probably would keep that in the boardroom talks if they, at a certain extent, while they're kind of worried about it, like, hey, this is maybe there's this off ramp, we can still kind of work out the prices. But it seems like he's probably exhausted those options and now is moving in some kind of, alarm bells to the public, which I think is kind of alarming.
Yeah.
But
President Trump is a pragmatic guy. He doesn't get real wed to anything. He's not real starry-eyed about this or that. And he just looks, he knows, he's talking to these oil executives. They're giving him the straight scoop. I think they're a little afraid, companies like Exxon, they're afraid that if they don't let people understand what is coming, the next thing everybody turns on them and says, oh, it's those darn oil companies, they're doing something.
Yeah.
So they have to give a realistic assessment that is politically unbiased. And I think Trump, he knows that we're about to fall off a cliff if we don't get this thing wrapped up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was, some attacks on Bahrain, which holds, a U.S. military base by Iran in retaliation to kind of our attacks as well. What is your take on some of those events? I know that you have Trump coming out and telling aides that he will start a full-scale bombing campaign against Iran if troops die. That reminded me of the Obama chemical warfare attack on Syria, where he made the statement, oh, this is my red line. This is where we, will start this. And then it happens. So that's kind of what it reminded me of, is him making this declaration. Oh, well, if U.S. troops die, then, we have our hands are tied and we have to, it's our red line. We have to start bombing Iran again. It's almost
one of the worst things that has been happening within the Trump administration. And I don't know that Trump even understands that it's being done to him, but you have people like Marco Rubio and different ones who come out and they make these extremely aggressive declarations, and they say, unless this happens, we're going to do this. And gradually they're boxing in President Trump. And I'm sure this is I'm sure they're talking to Israeli representatives, and the Israelis are saying, why don't you get Trump to say he declares that he wants unconditional surrender, and you will box him in this way. Get him to say this. Get him to say, unless we get every smidgen of uranium out of the country of Iran, we're going to destroy their civilization. Mm. And obviously, nobody can ever get all of the nuclear material out of a country the size of Europe, but they're getting him to box himself in. It would have worked with anybody but Trump, because Trump has this sort of rolling way about him where, he'll say something and then he says the opposite the next day, and he says something else, to where people sort of are trying to track where is he exactly. So it makes it harder. But I do believe that Marco Rubio is deliberately trying to box the president in to make it more difficult for him to arrive at a pragmatic resolution of this war. Mm-hmm. I don't think Marco Rubio is necessarily the strongest ally of Donald Trump. Marco Rubio is very ambitious. He knows Trump's time is going to come and pass, and he wants Israel to be in his corner because he knows the power they wield, and he wants to be president. So.
Yeah, it's speculated that it was Marian Adelson was a kind of a main reason why Rubio is put in the position that he is, that she kind of convinced Trump to put him in there. Because if we remember 2016 debates when Marco Rubio was a presidential candidate, they did not get along. They were giving low blows to each other. Trump would call him Little Marco. It was, so by all accounts, they had never shown a friendly side, a side that they were willing to work with each other. If anything, they showed that they were kind of enemies, and that Marco Rubio wasn't a big fan of Trump neither, and Trump wasn't either. So I had heard that it was Miriam Adelson, which is a person that has Trump's ear constantly, was the person that pushed for Marco Rubio to be in that position. And Marco Rubio has done a phenomenal job at pushing for the agenda of just nonstop war. So if anything, she maybe got some good returns on that.
Yeah, and anybody who wants to see the country at peace had better watch out for Marco Rubio. Mm-hmm. He's a silver-tongued devil who, he can make, bad seem good and good seem bad. Watch out for him because he is not representing the interests of the American people. He is representing certain interests. Some of the interests, for example, his desire to attack Cuba and go to war with Cuba. That is because of billionaires in Miami. Mm-hmm. Cuban billionaires. I mean, they have massive wealth, and they want Cuba, and they intend to take it. And then on the other hand, he's got the Zionist movement with very key billionaires, and you mentioned Edelman. These are very, very powerful people who control the levers of power. And he knows, I'm not saying that Rubio is involved in this, but he knows that Mossad, the Israeli intelligence organization, is deeply invested in blackmailing American politicians, media stars, newscasters, everybody. It's very easy to blackmail people. You get young ladies who, like with the Epstein, you get young ladies who are maybe in their early to late teens, and they're very attractive to men, but it's unlawful to have relations with them, and they get people to go to Fantasy Island, and they videotape them, and the videotapes are held by Mossad. Mm-hmm. And so they blackmail. Who knows? I mean, they blackmailed thousands of people in the United States and foreign countries. And so the power is so immense, and it's such a dark and sinister cloud over this country. But anyway, we were also going to talk just a little bit about the Democrats' dilemma with the Iran war. In the same week that they pushed through the War Powers Resolution against the Iran war, they also voted a huge new blob of money to give weapons to Ukraine, so that the big investor class can double down on their bets against Russia. So and I hope people will not. I know it's very confusing exactly what you do, but don't be misled by the idea that somehow Democrats are the party of peace, Republicans the party of war. Both parties are parties of war. But in any event, the Democrats have gotten themselves in a real dilemma with the Iran war, because they are trying to play both sides. They understand the power that Israel has over this country. But at the same time, they have a pretty good hold now on the Muslim population in the United States. And so it was a very interesting thing that happened. There was a big march. Democrats were marching in New York's Israel Day parade. Now, why they have an Israel Day in the United States, who knows? But obviously, politicians like to be seen bowing down and kissing the shoes of Netanyahu and all of these other characters from Israel. So then there was a problem because one of the marchers was the far-right finance minister, Smotrich. Smotrich is under indictment by the International Criminal Court, and prosecutors are trying to serve him with arrest warrants for crimes against humanity, for trying to purge all of the Palestinians from Gaza. Just to put in perspective the enormity of this, what is considered a crime by many, the population of Israel is 9 million. The population of Gaza is 2.1 million. So it's not like a small population of people, and the Israeli government has made it firm policy that they're going to purge that entire area of the indigenous people, and they're going to kill them, or they're going to starve them, or they want them to just voluntarily leave, but they don't have anywhere to go, and so they just want them to die. I mean, it's clear that they want the people of Gaza just to die.
Yeah, they're still enacting a very, very harsh blockade on Gaza. I believe primarily there's only one really working hospital. Some other hospitals, they are able to do some kind of minimal triage, but you have one hospital that's you could go to seek some modicum of adequate care. There's a fuel blockade, so much so that the hospitals are teetering on the brink of them not being able to, the one hospital, operate in its capacity that it had been, which was still significantly under what any hospital that you or I would go to if we say we fell from given if you were in Gaza, you fell from the place that once was your house and it's full of rubble, and you broke your arm or you got a compound fracture. I mean, you're not seeking any adequate care. It's very alarming what could happen to you. And if you were somewhere here, you would have a high chance of survival. So I think that's it's so heartbreaking. And you have the blockade where only 15% of the resources that's needed to keep, we say that's the consensus. I think back before they did this bombardment campaign, this genocidal campaign, was 2 million. We have no idea what it is now, but at the numbers of 2 million, they needed a certain amount of food to get in. What's going in right now is only 15% of what is needed to sustain a population of that size. So you can only tell that, the elderly, they are likely all, not going to survive this. The people who have other underlying conditions are not going to survive this. And the women that have experienced this bombardment for almost 3 years now will have significant complications if they try to conceive pregnancies in the future. That's been a known thing that has happened it's a toll of war, the bombs, the the soot that gets in the air, all of that is like a major contaminant for your body. So all those things, compounded. It's really, they've done their job at annihilating the population that was in Gaza.
Yeah, and that's certainly the objective. Let's see, a couple of other things I just wanted to touch on. I'll just mention there have been a couple of reports that are interesting, actually more than a couple, but they've been building up. And there's apparently there have been surveys taken, and Americans are beginning to become less enchanted with the idea of same-sex marriage. They're definitely turning very harshly against transgenderism and the whole cross-dressing business. There was a time when sodomy was a crime throughout the country, and it wasn't as though it was enforced. It was one of these things where it's just when children were molested, or where people got too public about what they were doing, then the vice squads would have a crackdown, and they'd sort of hush this up, because it's sort of like prostitution. Prostitution goes on, but you have to sort of keep it from getting out of hand. But in any event, under Barack Obama, the gays in the military, that was the wedge issue to force the acceptance of sodomy on the American people. And of course the media went along with it, and it was very successful. There were many in the homosexual community. We had men, and they were very interested in adopting boys, and that was one of the, because there had always been marriage ceremonies with homosexuals. But what they did not have is the ability, by virtue of this marriage, to adopt little boys. And so that was, a kind of an unspoken motive behind it. And of course, now they all, in many cases, they have preference in adoptions, where they, if they're homosexual, they're given first choice of the children they want to adopt. So anyway, the public is starting to sour on it. NPR has done articles on the struggle that the gay rights movement is having to get corporate sponsorships for these pride celebrations. It's important for people to understand what a pride celebration is. It's celebrating not certain, a certain race or what of people. It's celebrating a certain deviant sexual practice, predominantly where men do very unnatural things to other men, and all of the media propaganda makes it look like, oh, it's just just a big humorous thing, but it really has very destructive impacts on society. And so anyway, it's just something to be aware of, and just I think we're going to see a gradual diminution and sort of a return to normal, because this promotion of homosexual behavior it's not in the historical norm of mankind. It's the kind of thing that sort of burst forth and then gradually is brought back and suppressed to where it's a manageable problem. But anyway, it's interesting that this is going on in our country at this time.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. The Pride celebration is struggling to get the corporate sponsorships. Yeah, I found that to be interesting as well. A lot of that was integrated into like I guess the corporate life of funding these parades and stuff. It's interesting. Yeah, I wonder what their whole reasoning is. This political shift or something. So definitely an indicator of something. And I did want to mention for the Ukraine bill, which now releases up to $1 billion in military aid and reconstruction. You had 18 Republicans join on to the Democrats, and you only had one Democrat that voted against the bill, which was Ilhan Omar. So I found that to be very interesting, and also it allocates funds. Let me get it right here. $250 million of your American taxpayer dollars for a radio. Now these radios are NATO funded. They're NATO. For lack of better terms, NATO propaganda, essentially. And so we're injecting that money to be able to encroach this radio into Russian territory. So that's very interesting. Our money just goes to wherever it can. It goes to making a radio. Well, the radio station is already it's working right now. It's over and mainly in Europe, and it's been around for a very, very long time, but we're just kind of, more of your tax dollars are going to that.
Yeah, it's we've had this Radio Free Europe that was really designed to undermine the old Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. But the old Soviet Union, was right up to the border of West Germany at that time, and now we have rolled up, we've sort of changed places. The old Soviet Union was this hyper aggressive thing that was swamping countries. And now we're this hyper aggressive thing that's moved the opposite direction, swamping countries. And now we're broadcasting into Russia to try to undermine them. At the same time that here in the United States, we've cut off access that Russia might have to convey its point of view.
Mm-hmm. You couldn't watch RT for a while. I know that.
RT News was a very fine station, very respected, and that was a problem, because we couldn't have the truth about Ukraine be, the public, the American public would know what's going on, and you couldn't have that, because then people might say, hey, wait, how come we're spending untold billions of dollars and going into debt and risking the sovereignty of the United States, and who's making the profit? Who are the bankers and the hedge funds who are betting on this war? So I think we're I think we're getting pretty close to our.
Yes, we are. I want to thank you, Senator, for giving us your expertise and all the discussions that we had today. It is pure madness all around us. So just trying to talk sense in the world. And so I'll encourage everybody to subscribe and share, and join us next week to focus on the news.
Thank you, Morgan.